Well, hey there, and welcome to Rural Strong Live. I'm your host, Brent Adams, and today, Farmers Business Network released its 2023 Planting Intentions Report to provide farmers with key insights into the ever evolving crop markets. And today, I wanted to welcome into the program Kevin McNew, the Chief Economist and Vice President of Research for FBN, to discuss the report, which is being released ahead of the March 31st USDA report. And Kevin, welcome in here to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brent. Excited to talk about our findings.
Well, I tell you what, this planting intentions report is one of the first survey reports of its kind released in the agriculture industry, as it accounts for 4.7 million acres of principal crops across the United States. And it's been touted for its accuracy. And before we get into the specifics of the report here, if you could walk us through the history of the report and how it's being helping the planting intentions kind of come into focus for farmers.
Yeah, I mean, FBN was founded 8 years ago on this idea of using data and analytics to help disrupt kind of the paradigm that farmers face, which is a lot of lack of transparency, things that are out of their control, and markets are certainly one of those where they really tell us that it's a really challenging environment. And so, we've been very fortunate over our 8 years to use data from our farmers. They share it, we crowdsource it, and we give it back to them in meaningful insights. And so this is our third year in a row of doing the March report. And as you mentioned, we've had really good luck and track record around our kind of directional accuracy in this report. So, 2,000 farmers contributed to this report. They got it back on Monday to kind of hone up their marketing transactions ahead of the February or the Friday release.
So take us a little bit deeper on the factors that go into this report, because it seems to involve so many of the things we discuss regularly on our Tractors and Troubadours program, such as global geopolitical factors, weather, international trade, input prices, and things of those nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think what farmers are dealing with is, somewhat of a better cost situation on, especially the corn side of the equation. We're seeing certainly nitrogen-based fertilizer prices have been coming down, certainly well off where they were this time last year. And so that's improving the situation and the outlook for corn. We're also seeing, chem costs come down. FBN obviously actively involved in chemical markets and in chemical retail business, and so we are seeing some improvement there. But I think the message we heard loud and clear from our 2,000 farmers was that they're pretty much in love with corn. You hear that a lot, and this year is kind of the case in point. And so we see pretty big corn numbers on the horizon, and maybe a surprise on a shorter bean crop than what most analysts are looking for on Friday.
Well, with that housekeeping out of the way, you kind of led me into that. Let's discuss some of the specific findings of this report. And we will start out with an increase in corn acreage for the 2023 growing season. We're talking about 92.5 million acres in 2023, up nearly 4.5% over 2022. And that's somewhat in conflict with the USDA's February report of 91 million acres of corn. So with that said, it sounds like FBN economists are somewhat bearish on the corn market.
Yeah, and again, we're the only ones at this point that have this much data from our farmers. Even USDA in February, it doesn't really have this kind of data. So their economists are a little bit handcuffed. And I think what we knew going into this survey was that the upper Midwest farmers, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, would come back strong with corn this year because of the challenges they faced last spring with cold, wet growing conditions. So they weren't able to get the crop in last year like they wanted. So we knew they would come back strong this year. And they signal they are going to do that. So of our 4 million acre increase year on year, 2 of that is coming from those 3 states. What surprised us, Brent, was kind of where other states were pretty much still moving the needle on corn. Iowa, Nebraska, coming in pretty strong on their favoritism towards corn. We didn't see many states other than maybe Michigan and Tennessee that showed some indication of maybe backing down on corn. So that led us to our pretty big corn number. And like you said, we'll see Friday what USDA throws at the trade.
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier, another highlight of the report is a reduction in soybean acres to 84.5 million acres, down 3.4% from 2022. And this seems like it could bode well for new crop soybean prices.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one, or it's a big shocker for sure if it's right. And I would say, when we have been, the last 2 years, our soybean numbers been pretty directionally accurate. And so I know there'll be people out there that'll be very skeptical, but I can tell you historically we've done pretty well on beans. And so, our farmers again, really saying we don't want to grow many beans. It was kind of regional, it was nationally in focus, but certainly there were regions where we saw that play out, like in the South. So in the South, we didn't see a big a drawdown in cotton acres. And those farmers there, instead of coming into soybeans, were going more into corn. Normally they would be going into beans, but this year not so much. And so, it just kind of played out when we added up all the numbers across all the states that, we come up quite a bit below where USDA was and where the trade is heading into Friday.
Well, you also took a look at the nation's spring wheat crop and found that U.S. farmers are expected to plant 11 million acres of wheat this spring, up just a slight bit from 2022. That said, how are FBN economists feeling about the spring wheat market?
The wheat markets, today is a good day for wheat for what's going on between Cargill and Russia. There's a lot of still potential fireworks in wheat because of what's going on in Eastern Europe. I can tell you from my neck of the woods up here in Montana, it is a wet, cold, and no relief in sight in terms of warming up soon. So, we did see Montana farmers really kind of gravitate to growing more spring wheat thanks to all this plentiful soil moisture. The rest of the kind of Midwestern states, a little bit higher on some areas, a little bit lower. So we don't see a big change. The thing that I think the trade will watch on March's report is also the winter wheat number. That was a big shocker in January from USDA, such a big number. And so we'll see if they bring that down. They've had to do that in the last couple of years because they've been a little too aggressive on wheat. And our farmers told us that as well. So we do think the wheat acreage total number could be a little smaller than what the trade is expecting.
And we should also note that the report provides insights on forecasts for other crops, including sorghum, cotton, durum, rice, barley, and oats. What are some of the takeaways from those commodities?
Yeah, I would say this year we didn't see really, big moves one way or the other. The one that, we are kind of in disagreement with USDA on is cotton. I alluded to that earlier. USDA in February really thought cotton farmers would wholesale change their cotton acres, going from a little over 13 million down to 10 million. So they were really looking for a big drawdown. And we just didn't see that when we got the numbers back from our cotton farmers. So we came in about 12.2, which is a haircut, about a million acres lower than last year, but not anything near what USDA has penciled in. So we will see what Friday says. Other than that, sorghum, I don't think there's anything really that lights the sorghum world on fire. Some of that's drought related. We kept our sorghum numbers about the same. Historically, we've seen China, at times buy a lot of sorghum, and that's driven sorghum acres. But this year, that's not necessarily the case. So I don't see a lot of big things on the smaller fringer crops that may impact things too much at this stage.
And we should note that folks can download the full 2023 FBN plantings report by becoming an FBN member at FBN.com. And outside of this report, what else do you have working right now that folks should be aware of?
I think the good news I mentioned was, costs are coming down. We just had our FBN price transparency report on chemicals. It's the one of a kind, again, crowdsourced invoice chem data from our farmers that showed us that, prices are definitely coming down, but there's like an extreme amount of variability in what farmers are paying. And that's, really been an objective of FBN since day one, 8 years ago, is to improve the transparency of markets. We believe every farmer should get the same price, regardless of who you are, how big you are. And so, our offerings are all the same for every farmer, whether it's buying chem, taking out loans, buying livestock products. So, we hope you visit us online and just give us a whirl.
And we should mention that we do have some more insights into FBN, kind of the backstory of FBN and some of what you guys are working on with loan programs and so much, that will be on this episode 72 of the Tractors and Troubadours podcast, which will drop this Friday at ruralstrongmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So come learn a little bit more about FBN this Friday, and it'll also be on the Tractors and Troubadours radio show, heard nationwide, and on Rural Strong Radio this week. So make sure you go check that out. And Kevin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Rural Strong Live to be able to talk about some of what's going on here with the Planting Intentions Report.
My pleasure, Brett.
And I want to thank everybody who stopped by to join us today, and would love to invite you to check out Tractors and Troubadours, where each week we bring you agriculture industry newsmakers, hot button industry issues, educational features, and the best in traditional country music. And that can be found again at ruralstrongmedia.com or wherever you get your podcast. And we are portable, so make sure you download it and stream us. So you're going to be spending a lot of time in that tractor, and then in the sprayer, and then in the combine. We'd love to come along for the ride here and keep you up to date with the latest in the agriculture industry. We'd also love for you to check out Rural Strong Radio, which is our 24/7 streaming radio station found at ruralstrongmedia.com or on the Live 365 streaming radio app. And it's playing the best in traditional country music, some Western swing, some bluegrass, and some Southern rock and inspirational music when we're not playing our great ag programming, which we have quite a bit during the day here. So make sure you check in on that. We are constantly growing to become the definitive voice of rural America. So stay tuned for that. And we want to thank you again so much for taking the time to join us here today on Rural Strong Live, and invite you to come back. We're going to be having a lot of these both on the ag side and the country music side here over the coming weeks. So stay tuned to the socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. We'll get you plugged in. So for Kevin McNew, it's Brent Adams, Rural Strong Media, and the Tractors and Troubadours radio show and podcast. Have a good day, everybody.